This is a special presentation of Milwaukee Public Television. Next Avenue, a community conversation, the art of living and learning. Live from the John Michael Kohler Arts Center in Sheboygan, here's your host, Mark Segrist.
Well, good evening, and what a joy to be here at this beautiful setting, the beautiful John Michael Kohler Arts Center. Before we get started on this evening's celebration of festivities, just a little housekeeping notes. If you would be kind enough to turn off your cell phones, we're going to have some exciting production here, live production here, and we ask you if you turn them off during the duration of our programming, we would be most appreciative. We'd also like to extend a warm welcome to those of you who are here in person at the Arts Center, as well as those of you joining us in our audience through live streaming on the MPTV Next Avenue website. This is the second in a series of community conversations geared to complement the lifelong learning commitment of both PBS and Milwaukee Public Television. Now here to tell you more about this evening's festivities and also the ongoing series here through our partnership with PBS, my good friend and General Manager Ellis Bromberg. Ellis?
Thanks, Mark. Well, on behalf of the Milwaukee Public Television staff and our funding partner, the Helen Bader Foundation, we want to welcome you to this Next Avenue community conversation on lifelong learning. As Mark mentioned, it is the second in our series of community conversations throughout eastern Wisconsin. When folks hear that we work for Milwaukee Public Television, they often tell us something they like on channels 10 and 36. It might be Antiques Roadshow or Downton Abbey, or Around the Corner with John McGivern, or Healthful Indian Flavors with Alamelu, or any one of dozens of other shows that are on channels 10 and 36. We love that input, and we shouldn't be surprised that the comments are usually about TV, since the word television is part of our name. But today's public television and today's MPTV is more than just a TV station. It has evolved into a non-commercial, educational media resource with multiple platforms. Besides channels 10 and 36, the MPTV family consists of a variety of multicast stations, including MPTV Create and MPTV World. We have a state-of-the-art high-definition production facility. We're regularly posting on Facebook and tweeting on Twitter. We publish a monthly magazine. We offer an associate's degree in television and video production through Milwaukee Area Technical College. And throughout the year, we coordinate community video screenings, special events, and workshops for teachers, parents, and children. Of course, one of our most popular services is our website, mptv.org, which is now 17 years old. While most of the information on it is designed to promote programs on our air or events we organize in the community, we do occasionally treat mptv.org as its own channel. We have produced several programs in recent years that were available only on mptv.org. This year, we launched Next Avenue, an MPTV service that is unique to mptv.org. When you access it by linking on the mptv.org homepage, you are taken to a world of information intended for those of us age 50 and older. I turned 60 last week. I'm a kid, I know. Next Avenue's specific content areas include health and well-being, money and security, work and purpose, living and learning, which is today's subject, and caregiving. There are articles, columns, local information, and links to videos, all intended for the largest and most diverse 50-plus population in history, as we all plan for and define a new life stage. The national website is coordinated by our colleagues at Twin Cities Public Television in St. Paul, and through a generous grant from the Bader Foundation in Milwaukee, MPTV is offering this series of local community conversations that parallel and draw from the information on the Next Avenue website, including this event today, which, as Mark indicated, is being streamed live and will be archived after today's event on the website. Now, just as Sesame Street has been a trusted highway for our youngest viewers for decades, our older viewers are now able to find safe passage on a new road of life through Next Avenue. You get it? Thank you for being with us today, here in person or online. And next time you're in front of your computer, please join us on this journey by going to mptv.org and clicking on the link that will take you to Next Avenue. Mark?
Thank you so much. That's right. And Ellis, I think you might have page 1 of my copy here, if you'd be kind enough to. That's okay. That's all right. I appreciate it. And thank you for your kind remarks. And I'll tell you, I can't believe that the website is already 17 years of age with Milwaukee Public Television. This is an exciting venture to be part of. And I should tell you that our featured speakers tonight are the co-creators of the nationally syndicated Gray Matters comic strip by Universal UClick. Before launching their enterprise, Stuart Carlson's political cartoons appeared in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel for more than 2 decades. His partner, Jerry Resler, is a Milwaukee-based freelance writer. He served for more than 40 years at the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel and the former Milwaukee Sentinel. Mr. Resler's experience ranged from editorial writer to reporter and also columnist. In addition, we'll be joined by Amy Brinkman, Director of Education for the organization known as Danceworks. Ms. Brinkman will be sharing her vision for the 50-plus initiative. Our program will also include Susan Alby, founder of Chance2Dance, and dance instructors Gloria Zahn and Schulz will share their expertise on the benefits of dancing, including a great demonstration. Wait till you see it. I saw them rehearsing. They dance like butter, folks. You're going to love it. A bit later in our program, members of our audience will have an opportunity to interact with our special guests about their unique experiences and the joy of living and learning. So let's get started. It's my pleasure to introduce our first presenters, Jerry Resler and Stuart Carlson, co-creators of the very popular syndicated comic strip, Gray Matters. Gentlemen, please join us.
When Stuart and I took the buyout from the Journal-Sentinel after many years there, we both knew we still had a lot to offer. I was in my early 60s, and Stuart was only in his early 50s, practically a kid. In fact, he had just started shaving. Isn't that right? I think so.
Yes. Yeah.
Since we both enjoyed humor and had a knack for it, at least we thought, we started meeting over coffee one morning a week to talk about how we could tap into that valuable commodity. Humor, not coffee. We came up with what we thought was a novel idea, humor consulting. The recession had just begun, and with all the nasty baggage that went with it, we figured businesses could desperately use our humorous expertise to give their employees and customers, potential and current customers, reason to chuckle amid all that gloom. Unfortunately, that didn't pan out. So about a year ago last summer, we hit on the idea of writing a comic strip. It seemed like a natural. Stuart, after all, was an accomplished cartoonist. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. And I used to write a humor column, a weekly humor column for the old Milwaukee Sentinel. And besides, we had the right tools for the job.
There you go. You know, they always say that you should write what you know. And Jerry and I know about being baby boomers and being people over the age 50. And we know we're not alone. There are some 99 million people over the age of 50 in the United States, and that number is expected to increase by 20% in the next decade. But we thought this was a growing and a demographic that we could tap into and appeal to, sort of a chronologically captive audience. But we didn't know anything about launching a comic strip. So we sought out advice, and the advice was start a website of your own, post the cartoon on the website, develop it, develop the characters, develop a following, and get used to the rhythms and routines of doing a daily comic strip. So we did that, and several months later, we were lucky enough to be picked up by Universal UClick Syndicate and became part of their Go Comics website. And as a part of that website, we're seen by about 40,000 people a month. We have 40,000 page views on that site, and we have over 4,200 subscribers. So it's been a boon for us that way. What we'd like to do is to build on those numbers that we've got and eventually make the leap into newspaper syndication before newspapers become totally extinct. And the next step, I guess, would be world domination.
We decided when we were coming up with this strip that the main characters would be a couple named Elmer and Emily Grayson. They live in a Midwestern town, much like our hometown, Milwaukee. They're in their 50s. Now, Elmer, that's his first name, obviously, but no one has ever called him Elmer. He was always known from a kid on as Gray. When he was young, he thought that's a pretty cool nickname. But as Elmer got older and looked in the mirror each morning, he increasingly and sadly began to realize that Gray was no longer just a nickname anymore, it was a description. Now, his wife, Emily, is a school teacher. Elmer, by the way, works in an office in a job that we purposely keep vague. His wife, Emily, as I started to say, is a school teacher, and she teaches 5th graders. We thought that would be a nice gimmick for us because it allows our main characters, who are mostly seniors, to interact with a much younger generation. When we came to the idea of coming up with a strip, Stuart thought, how about naming it Coots? And at first I thought, not bad. It's short, sweet, instantly understandable by just about everybody. But then the more I thought about it, I thought, Coots has a certain connotation to it that can be kind of negative, as in, look at those two old coots up on the stage. So I thought, since the main character is a guy named Gray, it would be fun to name the strip Gray Matters, which works on a number of different levels.
You know, doing a strip 365 days a year is a pretty unrelenting kind of schedule. Fortunately, Jerry and I have a lot of material to work with, and some of it comes from our daily lives. We've got health issues and financial issues, questions of job security and retirement, the question of what do you do with aging parents? How do you care for them while at the same time trying to help your kids and grandkids? That so-called sandwich generation dilemma. And you've got other changes in society, and you've got rapid technological change that's happening every 30 seconds or so. I mean, the Pope just sent his first Twitter message, for Pete's sake. Jerry and I have talked several times about how this is a strip that we couldn't have done when we were in our 30s. We had to get some life experience under our belts before we could address these issues. So, Jerry?
Well, people sometimes, in fact, often ask us, readers and others, where do your ideas come from? And we say they come to us when we put on these aluminum foil helmets that we sent away from a senior magazine or a comic book, whatever it was. And then all of a sudden, these ideas start coming to us from deep in outer space by civilizations that we're always happy to find out are much older than we are. They consider us just the kids of the universe. Seriously, of course, as Stuart pointed out, the ideas come to us from things that we experience every day in our families and just about everyone we run into who's 50 and older. Some people think that the strip ends up poking fun at growing old, and that's not it at all. It's just the opposite. The idea and the purpose is to make everybody realize, 50 and older, that while we may lament the loss of, I won't say hair, the loss,
Thanks,
the loss of our youth, and the challenges and problems that we face as we grow older, there's a lot of us in the same boat. As Stuart pointed out, about 100 million people already, Americans, over the age of 50. And that, I think, can be comforting to people, but it also can be, I think, very helpful because as mental health professionals constantly point out to people, the best way to deal with stress and the problems of day-to-day living, no matter how old you are, is by keeping a good sense of humor.
So we've been talking about the strip. Let's knock off the chin music and actually look at some of the Gray Matter strips. This is Gray and his wife Emily in bed. And Gray says, ever since you've been having hot flashes, you've kept our bedroom temp like a meat locker. Actually, I find it quite comfortable. Well, maybe I should cut you some slack. In some ways, it's actually been kind of convenient. Which reminds me, what do you want for dinner?
I have to jump in here and say I think Stuart's excellent illustrations when he was a cartoonist for the Journal Sentinel, was named several times the top cartoonist in the country, and I think those things really help. Sometimes we come up with ideas, and sometimes $5. Sometimes we come up with ideas, and it's not until we see them actually that I realize how good they're going to be. You know, as we get older, all of us end up doing more searching, and not for the meaning of life. Come on, I've been there, done that, but for things that we've misplaced. Here we have Gray looking everywhere, in boxes, in folders, under seat cushions. And he finally yells out, "Emily, I've looked everywhere. They're gone. Gone, I say. Great. Now I'll have to buy a new pair of, never mind, glasses."
You know, a friend of mine emailed me and said, you know, you just summed up my life these days in one cartoon. Apparently he's missing a lot of stuff. This guy at the desk is named Munchausen. Maynard Munchausen. He's a doom and gloom kind of guy, hypochondriac. He's the first one to embrace things like this Mayan end of the world nonsense. So here he is at the office, and somebody says, "Why has Munchausen tossed out his Mayan desk calendar? It was only good through December 21st.
Okay. One of the things I think we all know that we deal with as we grow older are health issues. And as we all know, the older we get, the more aches and pains we feel. But not only that, the more tests we have to undergo. And one of the tests that I think people dread the most is the colonoscopy. So we asked ourselves, how do you take a serious subject like a colonoscopy and make it funny? And here's what we came up with. Here's Gray, it is at the doctor's office, obviously. And the doctor says, and so there's nothing to worry about during your first colonoscopy. We'll simply be looking for any polyps using a scope that has a tiny camera on the end. Gray thinks to himself, so my colon will be on camera, eh?
Now I'm going to do my best Marty Scorsese impression. Let's set up a long shot. No, a close-up. 2 cameras. Make that 3. Where's makeup? Let's get this guy on film. I don't want this to be a sequel to The Departed. Where's catering? Where's Bobby? I need De Niro. I thought, you know, leave it up to Jerry and I to put Martin Scorsese in somebody's colon. This was a series of cartoons about the colonoscopy, and in the last one, Gray is imagining a reporter in his colon. This is Stone Mason reporting live from inside Elmer Gray Grayson's colon. We're told there's nothing to see here, no polyps or lesions. That leaves just one question. How do we get our crew and satellite truck out of here?
These health things, by the way, before we jump into this, these health things prove very popular with people. We thought a number of people might be offended. Hey, that's not funny. Just the opposite. People like it. We've even had physicians writing in saying, this is great. What a great way to encourage people to get the exams they need. Now, as we get older, we all think we're going to be traveling more. But the reality is we usually end up just going more. That sad truth inspired us to come up with a character very popular that we call the potty monkey. He tends to turn up, as we all know, at the most inopportune times. Now, Stuart, whose creativity never ceases to amaze me, another one, gave him a fez and a cigar to make him look more mischievous and impish. So here we are, it's the middle of the night. Elmer probably thinking, oh, I just want to stay in bed. I don't want to get up and use the facilities. Says, so you're the potty monkey? Potty monkey's sitting on him, says, yup. And he says, and you're pressing on my bladder at 3:12 a.m.? Yes, and I know what you're wondering. It did take me quite a while to adjust the third shift.
Gray's watching TV. Tune in for Swamp Podiatrists. Don't miss the next Mountain Man Manicurists. A very special episode of Guys Cleaning Gutters. It's official. They've run out of reality shows. Jerry and I just discovered a new reality show called Amish mafia. So we kind of threw up our hands and said, how can you can't be
They'll never
reality.
run out of the reality shows.
It's insane.
Someday they'll do a reality show on us.
Yeah.
Think about how strange that will be.
Coots. Is this me?
That's you.
This is a cartoon that was inspired by seeing these decals on cars that said 26.2, and I thought, what is that? This character is named Dan Niles, the guy with the spiky hair. And Gray says, what's that mean, that decal on the car? It means they run a marathon. And this means they've run a half marathon. And that one seems self-explanatory.
We did catch a little flack on that one from a few people who said it wasn't funny to make fun of
But they
people.
had big guts.
But, right, yeah, they had. You know, you can't please everyone, and as someone said, at least they're reading and talking about it. Here, I think I don't need any introduction. Emily is coming in with the groceries, and Gray, is reading the newspaper. He says, wow, James Bond movies are now in their 50th year. You know what that means, right? Yes, 007 is now old enough to join ARP. James Bond, senior citizen, makes you feel old, huh? And of course he answers in a very cool way with his banana. I feel shaken, not stirred.
Gray and Emily going through some vinyl records. You remember those, right?
Which are now worth money.
Yeah. I think you could really winnow out some of the records in your collection. Take this soundtrack to Lawrence of Arabia, for example. Hey, that's a great soundtrack, epic. Yes, but done by the Harmonic Hats?
I don't think there is such a thing. We hope not. I was going to say that, point out here, make sure we're on the right strip. When we go shopping these days, I think as about everybody knows, more often than not, we all end up paying with plastic. And this prompted this strip about the death of cash. That's $10.89, credit or debit, the young clerk says. Neither, says Gray. Cash, here's a $20 bill. Okay, just swipe it.
We got a lot of reader reaction to that from people saying, you know, who had dealt with clerks who apparently had never seen American currency before, or didn't know what to do with it, and I was surprised at the reaction.
Someone, I think, reacted, though. They said, you didn't actually see a clerk who wanted to swipe the $20 bill. We said, no, that's where our creativity comes in.
I think doing Sudoku puzzles has been good for me. My brain seems more agile and my memory is better. That's great. I was afraid you'd lost interest. I haven't seen you with your Sudoku book in about a week. Do you know where I put it?
Okay, here we're introducing, we're not introducing, actually I think he had already been introduced. We never show him, and we're debating whether we will or not. This is Elmer's elderly dad. Elmer Gray dearly loves his dad, but his dad has an annoying habit of calling Gray at work when he really doesn't have much to say. Ring. Elmer Grayson, oh, hi, Dad. Everything okay? Actually, I'm a little concerned. I noticed one of those red squirrels outside my window this morning, and I didn't like the way he was looking at me. That is not a true story.
No, a lot of my dad in that though. And this is little Max, Elmer's grandson. Pop, can I have one of those? Sure, Max. As long as you're making one for Max, could you fix one for me? Hold the pickles? Okay, Dad. I believe now I am literally part of the sandwich generation.
This one is on Casual Fridays, and I think everybody is now familiar with the Casual Fridays. Here, Gray is talking to Patrice, one of the women in the office. He says, you know, I used to enjoy Casual Fridays. Used to? But I'm thinking it may have become too casual. We got because the strip is syndicated nationally, and we got a lot of people around the country reading it. Someone wrote in right away saying they liked it, and they said now we don't have any question in our minds anymore what state Gray lives in.
Yeah, Cheesehead will do that. It's a dead giveaway.
And especially going outwards like that.
The guys and I were talking today in the office about how we used to be so hip years ago. You know, of course, that just using the word hip dates you, right? Or even worse, if we talk about hip these days, odds are the next word is going to be replacement.
Here is a strip that I got a kick out of when Stuart mentioned the idea to me. He says, I'm getting worried. I butt dialed my phone last week. Then I butt changed the channel on our TV remote. So Emily says, that happens to a lot of people, honey. Yesterday I butt rang our neighbor's doorbell. That didn't actually happen to you, did it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, we did say a lot of this comes from personal experience, but I'm not going to comment on that one. Let's put pen to paper, shall we?
Sounds like a good idea. Let's
And-
you put pen to paper.
All right. We're just going to run through the process of doing, you know, drawing a strip, and maybe Jerry can talk about the rhythm of it a little bit and about one of the characters that's in it.
We meet, by the way, we don't have studios, we can't afford that yet. So we meet at each other's house one morning a week and have coffee and breakfast and start throwing ideas out. Some of the ideas, you know, we reject. Some of the ideas we have to think about. One of the interesting things is when you're doing comedy, it can be really difficult sometimes that you've seen some of the best comedy teams, Dean Martin and Lewis, et cetera, because of the comedy and they're both creative and funny, they can end up arguing. So far, Stuart and I haven't gotten to that point, but then again, we're only about 8 months into this marriage, so you never know. One of the characters, we have come up with a lot of different characters, and we're coming up with even more, and that gives us a lot of room to roam in terms of covering different personalities, because the other thing, not everybody over 50, we're all in the same boat in terms of a lot of things as we talked about, but we all have different personalities, interests, etc. And here is Stuart, and he's got his back to me, and the guy that he's drawing is a guy named Dan Niles. Now, Dan Niles is the same age as Gray, Munchausen, and all the other characters, except Dan he's got that Peter Pan syndrome. Dan thinks that he's much younger than he is, and that if he just keeps coloring his hair and exercising and having all the latest technical equipment, et cetera, the latest iPhones, that he's never going to grow old.
So I should say, Gray is sitting next to Dan. He says, Dan, you're texting? Really? Here?
The other thing Stuart was saying about the rhythm, it took us a while to get used to it. Even though I used to write humor columns, it was a whole different thing. And I thought, well, it can't be too hard to translate some of these ideas and funny things into a comic strip. But actually, it really was. Because one of the things is you only have so many words. Sure, you can sometimes will have more words, and you'll see a lot of strips, comic strips funny, with more words than on other days. But generally, you want to keep it short because people don't have a lot of time. And since more and more the audiences are online, looking at the computer as opposed to the old days where you had a cup of coffee and your comic page in front of you and maybe half an hour to read the paper, including the comics, you want to get to the point pretty quickly. And I had to learn, and I'm still learning sometimes, to shorten up the language, etc., and try to make the joke, get into the joke, set it up, and do it quickly. And as you can probably tell, Stuart does the drawing. Although when I was a kid, I've come full circle, as my wife pointed out. When I was a kid, I used to write comic strips and things like this. And then I got into serious journalism. No, I'm kidding.
Gray tells Dan, "You've got a problem. You're a text addict." That's absurd.
By the way, in terms of characters I mentioned, we realized about a month or two ago that all the people that we had were still working. And increasingly, because especially with layoffs, et cetera, people retiring early, we thought, well, we needed someone who was already retired. So we came up with a character named Manny Mocha. And one of the first strips was Manny shows up at work at the office place. He used to work with Gray and Munchausen and Dan Niles. And he points out that how difficult it was. He said, here I worked 40-some years at this place, and I had a heck of a time getting in the door. And they said, why? And he said, you mean they checked your ID? And he said, no, they actually did a body cavity search. And a couple of people wrote and said, really? There's places that do body cavity searches for visitors? Sometimes we have to kind of remind people that this is all imaginative.
Gray didn't say anything. He says, I think Bob would beg to differ. Who's Bob?
It actually takes Stuart a little longer than this to do a strip. And the other thing, too, is that a number of strips are colorized. We've had people say, how come more of the strips aren't in color? Well, because you have to colorize it, and it's done on the computer. There's software to do it, but you still have to know what you're doing, and it's time-consuming in addition to doing other things. Stuart was pointing out that some of the more successful and long-running comic strips actually have people, they hire people, presumably because they're making enough money, to actually colorize the strips.
Let's run through that quickly.
Okay.
It's like it's been so long I forgot where we started. This is also an example, by the way, of what Charles Schulz used to call the greatest part of cartooning, which was just drawing the same thing over and over again. Dan, you're texting? Really? Here? You've got a problem. You're a text addict. That's absurd. I think Bob would beg to differ. Who's Bob? The deceased. And this actually, the genesis of this idea actually came from a story on NPR about people who were caught texting, and they didn't seem to be able to control themselves. They were caught texting at funerals. And I thought, that's just the kind of thing that our character Dan Niles would do. He'd be texting at a funeral because he couldn't control himself.
Of course, it could be worse if Dan was texting while driving the hearse.
And he,
Knowing Dan, he might.
I think in one of the things I'd like to leave people with is the whole process of doing the strip has been and continues to be a real learning experience for Jerry and I. And it's kind of outside of our comfort zone, but it's something we really are enjoying doing. And I just read recently that the average lifetime lasts about 680,000 hours. So when you think of it that way, the clock is ticking. time's a waste, and then you may as well do something you really enjoy doing. So that's the way I look at it.
Thank you.
Well, that was a great presentation. Fantastic. I think what I am so impressed about is that, you know, you're still practicing a craft, but you've reinvented yourselves based on your years of experience. How about another round of applause for this? Jerry Resler and Stuart Carlson. I hope your new enterprise goes for years, because obviously you're bringing a lot of happiness to your readers. Let's move on now to our second segment. Our second presenter this evening is Danceworks 50-plus instructor and co-founder Amy Brinkman. Amy has a long history with the organization as a teacher, choreographer, and administrator, and in 1998 she became the studio director for Danceworks. As a performer, she has extensive experience in both dance and musical theater throughout both the United States and in Europe. So please help me welcome Amy Brinkman.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I am really happy to be here to share my love of dance, and thank you for inviting me. Danceworks was founded in 1992. This year we're celebrating our 20th year, so we're pretty excited about that. Our mission is really quite simple at Danceworks. We love to spread and enhance the joy, health, and creativity of the community through our performances, classes, and outreach activities, which all integrate dance with other art forms. That's really important to our mission, so we love to do that. So that's a little bit about Danceworks. Oftentimes people say, I am an instructor in the 50-plus program at Danceworks, but I'm also the founder of the program, and people ask me oftentimes, what made you have the idea of having this program at Danceworks? And I got the idea from someone who you may know, someone named Oprah Winfrey. Probably know her, right? It's true, they say when Oprah talks, people listen. So it's really true. Years ago, I didn't see the show, but it was about 12, 13 years ago. She did a show sort of to pick up where these guys left off about doing things that will make you happy over the age of 40, which was, you know, younger than we're talking about. But what are you waiting for? What are these things that you've been waiting to do? And one of the things was, they talked about, many people called in and said tap dancing. Tap dancing was one of the things that people wanted to learn over the age of 40, which made me thrilled when I heard that. But I kept getting these phone calls from people saying, do you have adult classes for over the age of 40 in tap dance? And I would say yes, because we had many adult tap classes. And after like the 5th or 6th call, I was asking people, you know, why specifically are you asking for over the age of 40? And then that's when I realized of the performance that, or the show that Oprah did. So that's kind of where it started. And I thought, well, you know, there's obviously a need for this, you know, this kind of class, and people really related to tap dance specifically. So that was the first class that we offered, was a tap class. That was 12 years ago. And we now have 3 levels of tap, conveniently called 1, 2, and 3. Some of the students that take class at Danceworks have been dancing all their life, and others are just starting for the first time at the age of 50 or 60 or 70. Our oldest student, I believe, right now is 86. So it's really never too late to start. And people of all ages and abilities are in these programs. Some people don't like the idea that our program is called 50-plus. But most people that I talk to that take class at Danceworks would never have walked through the doors if they wouldn't have seen that in the title. I personally think we could call the program super fun classes for people of all ages and abilities. But our marketing department didn't like that. So we called it 50-plus tap or 50-plus ballet. We have ballet, 2 levels of ballet, and yoga as well. So as we started one class and got more and more interest, we added different styles based on the interest of our students. So we're really excited about the interest from that population. I would say also, we always tell people that we don't card at the door. So you don't have to be 50. There's many people who drop in who just happen to have that time of day open in their schedule. So we do welcome all ages and abilities. So after we started the program, and people asked, how is these classes different than a regular adult class? I like to tell people that it's not really so different. You know, people assume that it is going to have a very different approach. It's not very different, but most of the classes that we have are specifically designed to address issues as people become, you know, older. The little aches and pains. I know our yoga teacher is very good at asking, you know, what's bothering you this week, and I know things that can be transferred to your everyday life. Something that, you know, reaching something on the top shelf, making sure that everything that you do in your class is going to be able to be taken home and continue to be helpful to you. Students also tell me that they feel very comfortable in our classes. Our teachers are really accessible, and they really like to be engaged in everyone's personal life and making sure that they really feel the warmth of our organization, carrying throughout the whole organization and our classes. Some of the benefits that I hear from students that you would know that, of course, keeping active is very good for your brain and your body, but more specifically, people tell me that their balance has been improved, their core muscles, posture, flexibility, of course, are improved. They relieve and reduce stress, of course, stimulating your brain. One of the things I teach is tap. Tap dancing is a language, and you've probably heard that learning a language is at any age is very good for your brain. And tap is very much that same way, in the way that it's taught, in the way that it's processed, and it's just amazing to see students respond. Tap dancing also has an immediate response, so when you're dancing, you hear that you're good. You also hear when you're not so good and when you need to practice, so that's great. Students love that. Dancing literally takes away the aches and pains of getting older. You know, it's quite good at that. Dance in general reduces the prevalence of falls and the fear of falling too. People oftentimes think that are really preoccupied with, you know, out in the icy weather. What if I fall? I don't want to leave my house. And they feel isolated because they can't do that. Our students really, they come out in all weather, and it makes me proud to see that. As they say, if you don't use it, you lose it. So it's really great when people can get in and get some exercise. But I feel more importantly than that, that they're motivated to come to class because they don't feel like they're exercising. It's social, it's fun, they're learning something, and they're sharing something. One of my students said that the reason they started taking tap dance is because they wanted to do a duo with their little nephew at a family function. And then from there, she just continued to take classes. I'd like to share with you a few testimonials from our students, and I think that it makes me really proud when I read these words. Before I started tap class, I could never go up or down stairs without using a railing. My balance has improved so much that I hardly use the railing anymore. Even though I'm concentrating very hard in class, my mind actually feels very free, and I forget about all the little things in my life, and I'm just happy. Share one more. I've been able to bring the concept or the benefits of the concepts I've learned in class to all other activities and interests in my life, and I credit this class with helping me be a more positive attitude toward aging and toward the world in general. You might have noticed I made a little noise when I was coming up the stairs. I wore my tap shoes. I most often wear my tap shoes almost everywhere I go. But one of the steps, several steps actually, that people identify with tap dancing one is called the time step, and it's a step that keeps time. But oftentimes people will come in and they'll say, I want to learn that step that goes like this. And they kind of mimic an animated tap dancer. Well, this is what they're mimicking. So so it might be a specific step that leads people into our doors, but I like to also include a history of tap dancing, which is so prevalent in the genre of dance. Soft shoe is very much from the 1920s and 30s, which is this. You might recognize that step that goes with a song called T for Two. So sometimes it's an era that they want to keep alive, or that gets them excited about taking tap dance. I'll just do one more step. Later on, I believe you're going to see some swing dancing, and the tap dancers stole us. I'll admit it. We stole a dance called the Shim Sham. The Shim Sham was from the 1920s, and it was originally called the Goofus, and it was very repetitive, and for the audience to be able to kind of recognize the pattern and then join in at a point. So the tap dancers took it and made it their own, and this is the Shim Sham. So that's a little step of the Shim Sham. So I guess what I would want to leave you all with is exactly what our friends said before me, and that is to really just dive into what you feel is something that will motivate you to stay active, to keep yourselves active and your brain sharp. And tap dancing specifically really does that, because the sequencing and the patterns and the way you process them, you're constantly thinking. One of the warm-up exercises that I do in my class is this. So it's almost like a Morse code, a language, right? So it takes a lot of concentration. But muscle memory, yes, but brain power. So it's really like the whole package is engaged as you're dancing. So I would like to wrap it up in a way that tap dancers often do, and that is this. So thank you.
Amy, that was so nice. Is everybody having a good time? This is fun stuff here. We're learning some cool stuff. And now we move on to our third segment, our third and final segment this evening. Presenters this evening are from Chance2Dance instructors. They are instructors Susan Alby, Gloria Zahn, and Rod Schulz. In 2006, Susan Alby founded Chance2Dance LLC in order to teach social and ballroom dancing at various locations in the Sheboygan area, of course, including right here at the John Michael Coles Art Center. So let's welcome Susan Alby, Gloria Zahn, and Rod Schulz to our stage this evening. Folks, welcome.
Thank you, Milwaukee Public Television, for having me here today. My special thanks to Ann Brusky, our Senior Manager of Public Programs here at the John Michael Kohler Art Center. And also to Doug and Ross for all of your technical help. It is truly a pleasure to be part of these Next Avenue community conversations. I'm here to share with you a little bit today about the wonderful world of social and ballroom dancing. Why is this such a fabulous activity for adults over 50? And why has this particular activity been reported to be #1 in prevention of the onset of dementia? Major studies have been done at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, Stanford, and Johns Hopkins universities. In a 21-year study testing activities, physical activities such as swimming, bicycling, and golf, and mental activities including reading and doing crossword puzzles, results showed that frequent social dancing ranked highest in offering protection against dementia. The explanation for this is that social dancing engages all three of the elements that are necessary in keeping the brain sharp: the physical, the mental, and the emotional element. From his studies of the brain, Johns Hopkins neurology professor Dr. Mahid Fotuhu found out that the number one component for keeping the brain sharp is staying physically fit. Remaining socially engaged and mentally active in new and challenging ways are the other two components for keeping the brain young later in life. I feel that the new and challenging ways part is the reason why social dancing ranked so high. The two areas of the brain that are most affected by aging, the cerebral cortex and the hippocampus, are remarkably elastic, which means they can be rewired based upon their use. Think of your brain as being a network of pathways. If you'd have only one pathway and a tree were to fall down blocking that pathway, you'd have no way to continue on. This is kind of like what happens with dementia. So you need to keep creating more pathways in order to stay young. By trying new things, a person is able to build more pathways for themselves. In keeping these pathways active and then simultaneously generating new pathways is what strengthens the mental capabilities and keeps your brain healthy. So the two ways that social dancing can do this is by learning new steps and figures. This is what we do in our ballroom classes. These figures are then creatively combined in moving around the dance floor. And dancing on the floor with others requires split-second decision-making because other dance couples are choosing their own figures that they do as well. So this is how social dancing keeps integrating multiple brain functions at once, and this is what increases the connections or pathways in the brain. It's very exciting. And so now I would like to show you a video clip that shows some classroom dance experience and also some performance experience.
As you step through, you know. 1, 2, 3, 4, quick, slow. When you don't know and you don't know where to go to, why don't you go where action sits? Getting on the road. Life is a wonderful
Shining up to spread. It's just like the fella said. Tell me quick, ain't love a kick in the head?
I never missed an opportunity to go to a dance hall. My enjoying the practice, I want to tell you, I've never had a better time in my life. Great pleasure to work with Sue. She's a marvelous teacher. I gave you a photograph of what I looked like the first week or so when I joined the Navy. And of course, as you can tell from the pictures, I have not changed one iota. Of course, I had a little more hair then, as you can see, but other than that, not much.
So what are you waiting for? Now is the time to try new things in your life. Perhaps you've never, or perhaps you've always wanted to try to dance with a partner, but you had excuses. Like you were afraid of appearing a little ungraceful or feeling uncomfortable. Maybe you just thought that you shouldn't take out the time for it, okay? But as Dr. Gleason said in our community conversation last month, taking care of yourself is a gift to others as it is a gift to yourself. And in our lives, we grow as an individual when we try things that are out of our comfort zones. Clearly, taking care of yourself now may help to prevent requiring other people to take care of you later. The thing that happens now in your life is we need to keep our bodies strong while still keeping our joints healthy. And the marvelous idea about ballroom dancing is that it's low-impact form of exercise. The movements are weight-bearing, and so they help to strengthen the bones and the muscles. This helps to improve balance, as Amy said, thus reducing the risk of falls. At a social dance, dancers are often engaged from 2 to 4 hours. And they're able to maintain this higher level of energy simply because they're literally having a ball. Social dancing is so much fun. And as in tap dancing and other forms of dancing, social dancing is an artistic mode of exercise. So it has great psychological benefits because it allows people to express themselves emotionally. They are centered in the moment. And so it becomes a wonderful experience. The music, the power of music from time immemorial has helped to motivate people, to take them away from their troubles, and to tap into their memories. So at this time, I would like to invite my co-teachers, Schulz and Gloria Zahn, up here to show you a little bit what I'm talking about. Enjoying social dancing with a partner becomes, as one of my fellow dancers put it, a higher quality of recreation, and has even been referred to as transcendent play. As the dancers are dancing, there's a unique language as they interpret the signals and they react to each other, while at the same time they're experiencing the moment, every moment by moment. In conclusion, I would just like to say that this website was named Next Avenue to be like a bookend to the Sesame Street program, where children learn through fun and creative and interesting experiences. And we find that ballroom dancing is just that: fun, creative, exciting, and interesting. It helps in weight control, it builds the stamina, and it improves mental focus and memory. And so what could be a more perfect bookend? Thank you so much.
And thank you, Susan. That was a wonderful demonstration. Susan, Gloria, and Rod from Chance2Dance. This has been a fun, fun evening. Let's give a round of applause to all of our presenters, if you will, tonight. Jerry Resler, Stuart, Carlson, Amy Brinkman, Susan Alby, Gloria Zahn, and Rod Schulz. Once again, the link to our Next Avenue website can be found at www. That's a lot of W's, folks, mptv.org. That's where you'll find helpful articles, videos, and resource information about helpful lifestyle issues for those of us who are 50 and older. Our next MPTV Community Conversation is scheduled for the month of February, and we hope you will join us then. Our presenters have graciously agreed to take questions for the next 10 minutes or so regarding living and learning. We encourage you to stay in your seats. We'll bring a microphone to you so that you can interact with them. Members of our MPTV broadcast and internet audience are invited to stay as well and listen to the Q&A. Now, before we get started with our Q&A, we encourage those of you with us at the Kohler Arts Center to take just a moment and please fill out their survey and turn it in for a special drawing. I'll tell you how the drawing works. Jerry and Stuart have kindly donated 2 signed original Gray Matters comic strips to encourage your participation. That is a huge donation. Also, our friends right here at the John Michael Kohler Arts Center have graciously donated 2 pairs of 2 passes for a chance to select one of numerous productions right here at the John Michael Kohler Arts Center. The way this works is we'll draw names right away after you finish completing your survey this evening, and then we'll have a second drawing as we move our reception to an adjacent room where we'll have a reception and ballroom dance experience. So we'll have actually 2 drawings this evening, which is really nice. Also, everyone here will be offered a lifelong learning certificate, and you can collect it as you depart for the reception and for the ballroom experience. So let me invite, John, should I invite all of our presenters on stage here? If you would join us here on stage, I think you all have wireless microphones so that you can respond to questions. Who would like to start a conversation here? Who has a question for one of our presenters? Allison, you're going to get the ball rolling for us. Go right ahead.
I am. I'd like to address it to our dancers. I love to dance, but in the last 5 years, I've had both hips replaced. Can I still dance? I mean, can I take lessons? Is it okay? How do you handle someone like me?
Well, I know that people that are in the ballroom world have had hips replaced and knees replaced. And so there are many people in our realm of dancers that have had surgeries like that. And so they are doing just beautifully.
Yeah, I would agree that you can continue, of course, talk to your doctor, but I think it's, and let your instructor know what issues you might have, but absolutely, yeah.
And I have a follow-up question. You know, for those of us 50 plus who have never really danced that well before and have always been kind of intimidated by getting up and dancing in a social situation, how do you initially get over that fear? I mean, can you lose it more easily when you're in a more intimate studio session? Or, you know, how do you get your courage, I guess is what I'm asking.
I think so. I hear some people come to class never wanting to perform. That's not what their goal is. But then after a while, a year, 2 years, 5 years, they start to get the itch and they may want to perform. And then it comes time to perform, and that's when they realize, oh, I never thought about the actual performance part. I'm quite nervous. And it's a process like anything else. It's a learning process. So the more you do it, the easier it gets. So I think students are assured that they know that all professionals make mistakes, and it's just as important to know how to recover.
Right.
And those skills are used in your everyday life.
And Susan, you said something during your presentation that really stuck in my mind. You know, go out of your comfort zone. Just go out of your comfort zone. That's when the fun starts to happen, right?
That is, and that is the way to build these new pathways in your brain. And so, I mean, why wouldn't you want to do that? Why wouldn't you want to go out of your comfort zone? We should all be searching for ways to find that go out of our comfort zone.
Yeah. We have a question right there. Yes, sir.
Sue, when talking about expressing your emotion, and I was thinking about this as you were explaining dance and the intensity of some of these dances, what does the tango express, as I've watched it over the years on television, when it comes to the emotion? What are they trying to depict there?
Well, the tango is a very passionate dance. And it expresses a little bit of dangerous passion, actually. And maybe Rod would like to say a little bit about what Tango Express is. You'd have to go over to the microphone.
Oh, please join us over here,
okay.
Rod. You are something. Let me tell you something. You make it look easy.
Thank you.
Go right ahead.
Aggressive passion is exactly how I would describe it. It's very staccato, very, very strong, and then the woman is also very in the moment with that as well.
And you take cues from one another in the course of the dance. Okay, yes. Another follow-up to that? Okay. Oh, come on, I know you have a bunch of questions. Ellis, you have a question, sir. I think you're still wired up, my friend. Yeah, now we have a handheld for you.
Well, I wanted to ask, it's probably for the dancers mostly, and did they start dancing a little older in life, or were they always dancers, even in their younger days?
Why don't you talk about that, Gloria?
Gloria?
Well, I've always had a love of dance. When I was 4, I wanted to be on TV, and here I am at 68 and a half.
Well, you act like you've been on TV all your life, Gloria. I'd like to dance with you myself.
Yes.
You're pretty light on your feet.
I would love that.
Yeah.
I started 8.5 years ago with Susan Alby, and it just gets better and better. Everyone's very nervous to begin with. You think everybody's watching you, but they're not. They're watching what their own body is doing. So it's you have to get over the self-consciousness and keep going to classes and keep practicing. It's a forever learning experience.
Did you surprise yourself at how good you became?
Am I?
You're very good.
Thank you so much.
I mean, are you exceeding your own expectations at this point?
No, I want to get better. There's always more to learn.
There really is. You never hit
always more
the
to
ceiling.
learn. And right now I'm assisting in the classes learning the lead part, because a lot of times if the women don't have somebody to dance with and practice with, I learn the lead part so that they can practice what they're learning.
Right, right.
And that is good for my brain and my body.
Absolutely. Well, you and Rod are a great couple on the floor together. You
Thank
really
you
are.
very
You're
much.
both very graceful, and you're graceful together. No, seriously. Yes, ma'am. You had a question, and we're going to get a microphone too. Yes.
Gloria just touched on this, I think, and that is how difficult it is as a single person. Can you address the fact that there's a perception that one needs a partner to attend a class?
What we do in our classes, every studio is a little bit different, but what we do in our classes is we rotate. And usually I start out by asking people if they have a problem with that. Also pointing out that it's a good thing to rotate for the leader and the follower, because the leader becomes a stronger leader and the follower reacts quicker as far as her interpretations of what the signals are. And so rotating the people in the classes, I find, is the very best way to learn. And generally, I haven't found any kind of a barrier to that from anybody. People are very happy to do it. And like Gloria said, we usually have a couple people in our class that know the leader and the follower's part, so that we can kind of even everything out for
Which
people.
one is more challenging, to be a leader or to be a follower on the dance floor?
That's a good question, a very good question. It's hard to be a follower in some ways, because you always have to wait, and you have to be receptive to very small little signals, whereas the leader has to be always like ahead, a few moments ahead in his mind, but not too fast, not too far ahead. You find the same thing with tap dancing. You think too much ahead, then that's a mistake then too.
Do you follow the leader's directions by eye contact or by body movement?
Well, it's kind of a little bit of both.
Okay.
In the rhythm dances, you are looking at each other right straight in your eyes, especially rumba, which is a very passionate dance, the dance of love. And so you do look at each other right in your eyes. And so you get some signals that way, but mostly from the body, mostly from the center of the body, believe it or not. They're not just from the arms, it's from your center. And so the movements are usually expressed. Rod's the good one to talk to about this, because they're leading from the core of your body and your emotions. It's a fabulous nonverbal language. You could dance with somebody anywhere in the world, and if they wanted to do a tango, you wouldn't even have to know what language they spoke. You could communicate with that person.
Fascinating. It really is fascinating. Yes,
I
Jerry.
don't want to be a question hog, but I had a tap dance question.
Okay.
I don't know much about tap dance, but I've heard buck and wing. Could you demonstrate
Well,
that?
buck and wing is a style of dance, and that describes the flat-footedness. So Bill Bojangles Robinson was the first person to bring tap dancing up to the balls of the feet. Otherwise, it's because it derives from African dance, so it's very flat-footed. So it's very flat-footed. Whereas nowadays, and especially in show tapping, it's all on the balls of the feet. So, yeah.
And I would assume both are strenuous.
Yeah, they can be. But as Sue had said about ballroom dance, it is light on the joints.
Yeah.
So it's low impact, and depending on how quick you go, but it's pretty safe.
No.
Yeah.
We have a question right here. Yes, ma'am.
I have a two-part question for the cartoonists. How long does it take for you to do a strip? And the second part is, what are your suggestions for individuals on how to recreate yourself?
Jerry, you want to start with that?
Yeah, I think it depends on how long it takes. Sometimes we've been doing this long enough that sometimes we'll have an idea, and it's amazing that we'll come together and I'll say, you know, I was just thinking, I saw something the other day, and what about if Gray does this? And Stuart will finish the sentence. So sometimes it works real well. Of course, the drawing part is what Stuart does, and that can take a little more effort. And so in terms of time, I guess you would be better able to answer that.
A lot of that depends on the amount of detail or lettering, things like that. Could be an hour, could be hour and a half, 2 hours. But a lot of, it's the major portion of the enterprise is coming up with the ideas. And creativity is such an up and down thing. Some days it's like, ideas are coming, you're finishing each other's sentences, and other days you're just standing there with drooling down you, and I don't know. What do you think? And that's just me.
That says him.
Well, where do you get your ideas? Are you both the kind of guys who literally, when you're driving around town, you have a notebook in your breast pocket and an idea comes to your mind and you jot it down?
We should do that, because what happens is often there's senior moments. We'll say, wow, that'd be a great idea. And then, of course, you get where you're going 3 blocks away and you've forgotten it. So what we have tried to do is make mental notes and write things down. And I just actually, when they were talking about ballroom dancing and tap dancing, I mentioned to Stuart, I said, we can have Elmer and Emily take up ballroom dancing. And that gives us a whole...
I can't wait to see it. I can't wait.
And as far as reinventing, the second part of your question, to me, I think it was Sue who said, you almost have to just try anything. Most of the time when I was at the paper, even though I did light features and I did a humor column, most of the time at the paper, I was doing serious stories, news stories, editorials about war and peace and all sorts of issues like that. And so for me, I was planning on, well, when I'll do some freelance stories like this. But Stuart and I started thinking about the humor, and I thought, well, there's something different. And like I said, I've come full circle. I'm now working on a comic strip, which I did when I was 8 or 9 years old, and aunts and uncles were saying, Jerry will never amount to anything doing that. And so I think it just really, I would say, from my own experience, Stuart's as well, although he did cartooning, just be open to almost anything. So
it's an exciting time.
Yeah.
Exciting time. Yes, sir. You have a question.
This is for Jerry and Stuart. I have a question for you guys, and then I'd like to actually make a statement to Susan and the rest of the team up there. You guys, what would you say is your main influences? I guess to take off of what he was saying, what is your main influences when it comes to drawing your strips? What do you have to say?
Do you have any one particular, growing up, did you ever? Probably our boarding house.
Yeah. Please elaborate on that.
No, actually, I thought of that because that's a strip as a kid. There was like Major Hoople, and he wore a fez and stuff, and I had no idea what that was about. As a kid, I just was like, what is this? I would say for me as a cartoonist, obviously, Peanuts and stuff like that. Going way back, there was a guy named Winsor McKay who did Little Nemo's Adventures in Dreamland at the turn of the century. Incredible stuff he did. But more contemporary strips like Calvin and Hobbes and even Zits. I often think of Gray Matters as like Zits, except instead of a 16-year-old kid, you've got people in their 50s trying to figure life out.
I personally like the strip Pickles very much. I think it's funny, and it doesn't make fun of older people, even though they'll have the main guy in it. He'll be forgetting things and doing things, but it does it and I think sometimes laughing at ourselves is very healthy. When I was doing even a humor column, I tried to make it self-deprecating. To me, that's the highest form of humor. Humor that it's easy to laugh at other people, but to kind of look in a mirror and laugh at yourselves, I think is the best. So I would say I like Pickles for that reason. I like a lot of other strips. And one thing too that we decided we didn't have time to mention, there's a lot of strips now today about talking animals and alligators, everything you can think of. That's great. But to some extent, except for Pogo, most of the strips years ago were people, even if it was Major Hoople in our boarding house, Nancy and Sluggo and stuff. And so we thought making it about people can make it a little more relating to people. And some of the best comments we get is someone will say, I see Gray, that's me, or that's my wife and Emily, or whatever. And, so.
Folks, thank you so much. You've been wonderful. You're also creative, full of life, and you're inspirational. You really are. So we really appreciate it. Thank you for joining us here in the audience. Thank you for those of you following us through live streaming on our MPTV Next Avenue website. We invite you to join us again in the month of February. And thank you for making this initiative just a fun thing to do. We collectively here at MPTV, we're really enjoying doing this with you. So join us again in February, and thanks for being with us tonight. Good night, everyone.